Thank you for joining us for this week's edition of the Process on Tap broadcast. Whether you are watching live on Twitter or YouTube, or watching a replay afterwards, or listening to the podcast, thank you for joining us. My name is Jeremy. You can find me on Twitter at Back of the Herd. I am joined by Hansel. You can find him on Twitter at Uber Hansen. You can find Thomas on Twitter at the Thomas DeLoss, and you can find our podcast Twitter at Process on Tap. There it is. All right. I forgot to mention this before, Thomas, not to put you on the spot, but you went to training camp today or yesterday? Yesterday. Any highlights from it?
Well, I got to meet Sal Capaccio, which was pretty cool. That guy was pretty sweet.
Awesome.
I'll be honest with you. It's really tough because one, the defensive line is just, I really truly believe that our defensive line this year is going to be a major issue. The one thing I've noticed very quickly through multiple practices, as well as, the other media outlets and just content creators, is that Ed Oliver looks significantly better this year. Not that in the last 8 games he didn't make the strides that he did, but it seems like even more so this year. And I think that's truly because of Von Miller. Von Miller is just, it looks like he's paying dividends. I think Greg Rousseau is going to see a massive step in his production this year. So if you look at all those things, that's interesting. I think that defensive line is just going to be, wreaking havoc. The other thing that I think is incredibly interesting is that we don't have a true definitive number one corner for Trey being out right now. Kaiir Elam really hasn't set himself apart, which I don't think is for a lack of trying. From what I read today, he's normally a man corner, right? He plays man coverage. They're trying to play off man and teaching him different concepts with that. And it's a really, really tough learn, and it takes a little bit longer for him to understand those concepts. So I don't necessarily think he's not going to be successful. The one positive, though, by him not being as good, we also have Christian Benford, who is, for a 6th-round pick out of Villanova, is truly proving to be more than what people thought he was going to be. So that's good. Overall,
I feel like the downside to Kaiir Elam, being drafted at 22nd overall.
Somewhere in that range.
Yeah, I feel like, to some Bills fans, like, he's a 1st-round pick, and if he doesn't look like Trey White as a rookie, like, right away, then they're gonna be probably pissed off. And you gotta remember, hey, he's got to develop, and some of them are just like, no, he needs to be like Trey right away.
Right. Yeah. It's tough when you have huge expectations for a guy. I mean, he was very much anointed as, like, I don't want to say the savior, but we haven't had a quality number 2. I mean, Levi Wallace wasn't bad, but he's not a world beater. He's not a guy that's gonna, a defensive coordinator or an offensive coordinator from another team is not going to be scared of Levi Wallace. That's why they targeted him all the time and went after him, because of the fact of how good Trey truly is. So you really have been, kind of tackling that, whether it was back when we had Vontae Davis, we had Josh Norman. We've gone through every veteran presence in terms of that number 2 corner. So you're hoping Kaiir can be. But on the positive is, I think there's enough options out there between Kaiir, Dane Jackson, Christian Benford, even Cam Lewis. I think there's enough guys there that can fill the void until Trey is 100% healthy. And like Uber Hansen, why did I just call you Uber Hansen? That was weird. Like Hansel has said,
it's at Uber Hansen.
At Uber Hansen. I think you just wait till he gets back. Wait till Trey is 100% healthy before you bring him back. Because at the end of the day, the Bills are going to be in the playoffs. The Patriots are a tire fire. The Dolphins, I keep seeing more and more passes of Tua. It looks really bad. I'm really excited about it, and it looks really bad. And then I don't hear anything out of the Jets at all. Like, I don't hear that Zach Wilson's lighting the world on fire. So
they've actually been saying that Flacco has looked better so far.
Flacco's looked better, yeah.
Which is not good either. Though I actually am slightly terrified of Flacco, because Flacco is actually, when he gets going, he's a fairly consistent quarterback.
I thought last year, I feel like I only watched like one game, but throughout the season, like their offense actually looked kind of normal when he was in. Like I think like the Monday or Sunday night game with the Patriots, they're actually winning for the longest time, and then they kind of just collapsed. So take that for what it's worth. But yeah, it is really bad that Flacco is playing so well because they have to start and stick with Zach Wilson for at least, I don't know, like how long do you have to stick with him until you're like, okay, do you even just drop him ever this season?
No,
Is it just you play him up?
He has to play the whole season. So
yeah,
I actually tweeted this out. The problem that the Jets have right now is that if Zach Wilson isn't the guy, if he doesn't pan out, doesn't work out, Joe Douglas will be fired and Robert Saleh will be fired. Like he has to be the quarterback. Otherwise, both those guys are gone because at this point in time, and actually I've asked this question a handful of times, Joe Douglas as a general manager seemingly has made every move correct. Like he drafts well, he signs free agents well. Like there's some bad luck obviously involved with all this, like all the injuries.
Becton again.
Yep.
But when it comes, that's bad luck. I don't think that's any indication of how.
What question is it? Is it luck, or I mean, you think of like their training and their like medical staff is something bad there because Mekhi Becton, Carl Lawson, like Corey Davis got injured like at some point last year. Like they were depending on what's his name?
Corey Davis has been pretty injury prone for most of his NFL career. Though.
Okay.
He hasn't been a stalwart in terms of staying on the field.
Okay.
And quite frankly, Carl Lawson was just a freak injury. So
but I will say there is something to it, right? Like since the Bills invested all that, I forgot how much that AdPro training center cost, which is top of the line training center in the United States, their injury, like they don't get hurt. Players do not get hurt. Knock on everything around me. But I do think there's something to say that like maybe the Bills do have a better training staff. Obviously, there's freak injuries here and there. There's concussions. Those are going to happen regardless of how well your trainers are. But I think there's a little bit of something there. The Jets do have the unlucky bug right now. The Bills had that for some time as well. But at some point, luck or whatever it is, it has to translate to wins. And they're not winning football games. And so that's why I said, if Zach Wilson isn't the guy, like if at the end of this year, they know 100% Zach Wilson's not the quarterback, they'll fire Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas. Like there's no reason to keep them at that point. I honestly think they'll fire him.
I don't know, man. I mean, you're talking 2 years of Saleh. That's a pretty big jump. And I know Woody Johnson's kind of a fly by the seam of his pants type of owner, but I don't know, man. I think Saleh seemed to, for what he had last year, which was a bit of a dumpster fire, I think he did pretty well considering. I mean, he lost his middle linebacker, he lost his defensive end, he lost his left tackle. His quarterback was a massive rookie, and you could tell he was just underwhelming. I would be surprised if the only reason I say I think it go either way, and I think it's possible, but it's the only thing is with a really good quarterback class in this next draft. Do they want to completely start over, or at least have a competent front office to just put in a new quarterback?
I think they gotta wait to for Zach Wilson to make that third-year Josh Allen jump. So I don't think they let anybody go.
Let me just to quickly elaborate on this. So Joe Douglas, I'll just start with him real quick. So Joe Douglas has been there for 3 seasons already. They've won 7 games, 2 games, 4 games. If they aren't successful this season, there's got to be a point in time where you're like, we're just literally not winning football games. So yeah, on paper, everything looks all fine and dandy, but what the hell is going on? Why can't we win games? Where you look at someone like Brandon Beane, who came into a literal dumpster fire of an organization and had to literally cut all this dead cap, like literally get rid of star players to make it work. And yet went 9-7 his first season. They purposely made the roster horrendous and still went 6-10, which is the same amount of wins the Jets have in the past 2 seasons. So the Bills' worst season under Brandon Beane equates to the Jets' 2 combined seasons. So that's why for me with Joe Douglas, especially if Zach Wilson is at the end of this year, if we know he's not the guy, Joe Douglas has to be gone. You have to fire him.
Whereas the Jets have had cap space like most off seasons, right? True. Yeah. Whereas like Brandon Beane, he really didn't have much cap space. Like his first 2, Joe Douglas he's had it for the last couple.
And then with Robert Saleh, yes, I do agree 2 years is a pretty quick pull, right? We've seen people get pulled after 1 year, but 2 years is a pretty quick pull, and you like to give these guys time to at least develop something with their team. My issue with Robert Saleh is he's a defensive coach. That's what he's supposed to be. They had the worst defense in the NFL last year. So I don't care if you have no talent on your defense. If your defense is the worst defense in the NFL and you are supposed to be this defensive genius, like there's something wrong there too. So again, if at the end of the season, maybe he's not as dependent on Zach Wilson, but if that defense looks as atrocious as they did last season, at some point you got to be like, this is your expertise, dude. Like, we got to move on from you too. But again, I could see them hanging on another year. To be fair, I hope they do, because I don't think Robert Saleh is a good coach. And
don't you love that? Like that thought process. You're like, just though you're fired, but don't keep him there, because if it's a dumpster fire, we want it to stay as long as possible. We just want to elongate this process. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, we kind of have a football game on Saturday. You guys want to get into that? I guess.
Let's do it.
I don't know about you guys if this is normal, but I get excited for the preseason games. It's like, it's football. It's been so long, and then you start watching it by like halftime. You're like, I'm over it, because it's just as much as like beforehand. I'm like, no, I want to see the second and the third stringers. I want to see how well they do.
Right, you sit there, you're like, I'm going to totally evaluate these players that are on the second and third team, the guy that's going to make the 53rd roster, and then you're like, I don't know what the hell I'm looking at here.
Yeah, but I'm going to do it again, regardless, and be excited. So we find out today that Josh Allen is not going to be playing. I checked Bill's Twitter. They have not said anything about any other players, but I feel like there has to be at least a couple other players, right, that don't play at all, or virtually none.
Sure.
So I kind of want to start off a conversation with like who we think plays either virtually no snaps or just no snaps at all. If Josh isn't playing, I feel like Diggs plays damn near little to nothing. What do you guys think?
I don't think Diggs plays at all, especially if Allen's not playing. Like, there's no reason for Case Keenum to be throwing footballs to Stephon Diggs. Like, I don't personally see the benefit there. Diggs is a seasoned veteran at this point in time. They're like, he's gaining nothing from being on the field. It's just the players around him gaining something. And the idea of putting Diggs in harm's way is just not something that I'm interested in at all.
The only people that I would play in this game are guys that are like that cornerback battle, that CB2. Guys on the back end of the wide receiver battle, the 5 through 7s, the Khalil Shakirs, the Isaiah Hodgins, Jacob Rose, whatever, but those type of battles, maybe that 9th through 11th offensive tackle or offensive lineman, those type of battles are the ones you want to see. Outside of that, I don't think any starter should play. There's no necessity to do it. I mean, like all the guys, Ed Oliver and Von Miller, Greg Rousseau, Daquan Jones, Tim Settle, none of them need to play. They don't. What they're capable of. The only thing that you're doing is risking really an untimely injury in a spot that's going to burn you more than it's going to help you. It's not going to you already know in the past 3 weeks, you've evaluated these guys intensively. You know what they're doing. You know what they can do on the board. There's no necessity against probably other second and third string scrubs. So the only people I'd play is your backup battles, and then maybe in the third preseason game, if you want to do a real quick tune-up, you put the starting offense for one series. Just get him out there just to hear, Hansel's side, just to hear Dorsey and Josh's ears, so he knows what it sounds like. Make sure that's all good. So that you're hearing all the loud noise with Josh. Outside of that, there's no necessity. I mean, because at the end of the day, if something happens to one of our big time players, not just Josh. I mean, if anything happens to one of our big, like an Ed Oliver or Von Miller or Milano or anything, that's cataclysmic. Because the big concept for this team is it's 111. And every one of these guys plays a pivotal role in the success of the team. And you take one of them out, Sure, you could plug somebody in, but it's not that guy. They're a starter for a reason.
Well, I feel like Thomas just gave an answer that makes him bow out the rest of the entire conversation. It's like
Well,
we know his answer for everything. Go ahead, Hansel.
I'll just to an extent, I very much agree with Thomas there. I'll say there's two players that are starter-esque players that I do want to see, and that's Kaiir Elam and James Cook. And the reason I want to see them is just because I want them to have live NFL game day experience. Like, have that experience before we go to LA on a Thursday night against the defending Super Bowl champions in a what should be a decent crowd. I've heard things about LA that they don't show out very well early in games. But regardless, I think some NFL experience for Cook and Elam would be beneficial. Cook, I would play significantly less just because running backs get the shit kicked out of them. So maybe run him a couple series this game and see catch some passes out of the backfield, just get the lay of the land, the speed of the game. And same with Kaiir Elam, just be like, this is a NFL receiver. He might not even make this team. Granted, we're playing against Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan is playing this game.
Michael Pittman's also playing, so it'll be a good run for Elam to actually get some reps there.
So there's 100% benefit to Elam to literally see what a good NFL caliber quarterback and NFL receiver will look like. And then the third part, and this is the thing I've been struggling with, and we know Josh Allen isn't playing this game. I do want to see him for one series at some point this preseason. I don't know if that'll happen. And I also don't know the rules. In my head, I want Josh to be basically wearing his helmet the entire game and the helmet to be mic'd up with Dorsey's voice. So Allen is hearing what Keenum and Barkley are hearing on the field. So he's getting used to hearing Dorsey in his head. I think that is the most important thing for Allen, but he doesn't even need to see the field really to be dealing with that.
Yeah. You mentioned Elam. I want to go to the defensive backs, but I kind of want to stick with the wide receivers before we move on. So to me, like you said, Hansel, like Diggs, seasoned vet, he's good. He has no reason to play because of that. I understand the injuries, but I mean, we have these preseason games. Someone's got to fucking play. So with Diggs being like the seasoned veteran, to me, like Gabe Davis is not at that level. I don't want to see him play a lot. I mean, I really don't think I want to see him play in the second quarter on, but like a drive or two. I mean, again, he's kind of got high expectations this season. Just, I think he needs, like you said, that's what preseason is, like give them a little bit of taste of like the real action. You know what I mean? So I feel like Davis should play a little, not asking for a lot. And that kind of goes with McKenzie too. In a similar way, they both have these expectations. I've been hearing about like how well like McKenzie's been doing in training camp, and he's got this slot job. Then okay, like I want to see him up against another team's defense again, a drive or two. Doesn't have to be a whole lot. Kind of meeting like Thomas halfway. Don't want to risk any injury, but I'm ready to see him play against the defense. So what do you? And everybody else after that absolutely plays. Khalil Shakur.
He's got to play. Yep.
Yeah. If Josh isn't playing, that means Case Keenum's gonna be playing a lot. Therefore, I hear him and like Isaiah Hodgins have a really good rapport. So it'd be nice to see him get a lot of snaps and go up. But Hansel, what do you think about Davis and McKenzie?
Yeah, I do. One thing you said is that makes complete sense. Is literally somebody has to play. Like not every starter. I agree with Thomas too that I want the starters to sit. I see no benefit for the most part, but some of them are going to have to play just out of necessity for a drive or two.
It's a rule
with Gabe Davis. I do actually think there is a slight benefit here. You're putting him on the field, especially without Stephon Diggs. You're signifying he's wide receiver 1. So he's going to get the bracket coverage. He's going to get, the best corner on the field. I doubt Stephon Gilmore plays this game for the Colts, but whoever their best corner is probably is going to be on Gabe Davis. And the same applies to Isaiah McKenzie. It's like, all right, if you're really our slot guy now, which I'm still not 100% sold on, but if you're really our slot guy, now you're it. It's you and Gabe. There's 1-2. You don't have the protection of Diggs. And by you don't have the protection of Diggs, what I'm saying is they're not focused on just this one guy. Not that they really would be in preseason because they're not going to throw complex defenses at you. But nonetheless, it's going to be legitimate football with McKenzie and Davis on. So I think you see them a couple drives here or there, and then it's like, all right, we've seen enough. Get them the hell off the field and put Isaiah Hodgins and Tanner Gentry and Neo Peu. I don't know how to say his name correctly, but I think it's Peu. Yeah.
Powell.
So that's what I think you probably see with that. And then Khalil Shakur probably going to get a pretty good run to this game, maybe 2 or 3 quarters.
Yeah. So Thomas, after that, are Davis and McKenzie. I think we all agree, everybody, after that for sure. Are you also Davis, McKenzie, no playing, maybe just a little?
I would be very surprised if either of them plays. The thing about it is I think they see Davis in the same light they see Diggs, quite frankly. I think he is, if he's not a bona fide superstar, he's just about there. He has every bit of training camp looked quite frankly, just as good as Diggs. I mean, he's stunning to watch. It's very easy. He doesn't look like a third-year wide receiver at all. Like he looks like a guy that is going to get paid a shit ton of money after this year. And then Isaiah McKenzie, same thing. Like even Von Miller today on Pat McAfee's show brought up Isaiah McKenzie as being a star, like one of the prime talents. I would just be I would be stunned with Case Keenum as the quarterback to see a lot of our primary targets or primary guys being out there. Like I said, there's enough with Tanner Gentry, Pau, Hodgins and Shakir. There's enough guys out there that you'd be fine. You don't need to. If you really wanted to, you need somebody, go sign a free agent, or whatever you need to do. I just don't think there's much of necessity. Plus, I think James Crowder is probably going to be getting a hell of a lot of run because he just missed so much training camp. I think he's going to get a ton of time.
I forgot all about him.
I would be surprised between the three.
Yeah, I forgot about Crowder like just in this conversation. Like I didn't forget he was on the team. I just for some reason I spaced on him. Hansel didn't mention him either, so I don't feel that bad. Did you forget to or?
No, I just I have a lot of thoughts on Jamison Crowder in my head.
Well, I mean, you mentioned, a lot of people are like psyched about McKenzie. You said you're not 100%. I'm in that same boat too. Like I know we've heard a lot of good things, but again, it's training camp. I don't know what to look at and be like, no, this is real. This is overblown. You know what I mean? So heard good things. Great. He is. How old is he? What season is he in? I'm just.
Isaiah McKenzie is 27, I believe.
27.
He's still very young.
4th or 5th season. I just feel like when you're developing a guy, it's usually supposed to start showing in his 2nd, maybe 3rd season.
He hasn't been getting much of an opportunity though. That's the tough part. And I think the one caveat for Isaiah, he's 27. He's his 6th season in the NFL.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, he's had to. Cole Beasley's been here like the entire time, so right. I understand he's just gonna be better. So I'm in the middle. Like I refuse to be one of those people that are like, nope, he's gonna go off this season. And I'm not trying to be like a pessimist. It's just like, okay, like I'm not gonna set myself get myself too excited and just get bummed. Like Gabriel Davis, like I know he's going to go wide receiver too. I hope he does great. But people are like, nope, he's going off this year, guaranteed. It's like, I hate those guarantees. You know what I mean? People are like, it's going to happen. Like, you don't know that. Sorry. And I'm not wishing against it. It's just, I hate when people kind of talk in absolutes. Is that just me?
I just like my biggest thing with both of them is like, I honestly hope that both come true. Gabriel Davis, I'm more confident in because I've literally seen the talent. Like he has freakish talent. And just, I go back to a couple plays here and there, like against the Colts in 2021 in the playoffs, like he made a couple sideline catches that made me go, okay, this guy could be special. And so I've been thinking that for a while, and we've seen flashes here and there. McKenzie, to Thomas's point, like he has not got the opportunities, which is fair. My concern is I've really never seen him consistently put up numbers in the NFL. Like the most receiving yards he's had in years, 282. So yeah, I could see him put up some decent numbers this season. But one thing I always go back to is throughout Josh's career, ignoring his rookie season because that was just a cluster of nonsensical skill players. He's had Cole Beasley there, and I know I'm higher on Cole Beasley than a lot of people. I'm talking specifically about on the field Cole Beasley. He plays a very different style of football out of the slot than Isaiah McKenzie does. And my biggest concern going to this season for this offense in particular isn't necessarily Ken Dorsey calling plays, because I think Josh's skill level is so high that he'll be able to compete regardless of who's calling plays, just because he can ad lib and make something happen. My concern is that when Josh goes and looks for that safety valve, McKenzie's not the same player. McKenzie's going to run all the way across the field. Like he's Tyreek Hill, like baby Tyreek Hill. That's the way that I more look at him. And when I say baby, I mean like super baby. He's nowhere remotely close to Tyreek Hill's skill level. Where Cole Beasley is, I'm going to find a spot. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to be open for you. I might be 5 yards downfield and that might be all you get from me, but at least I'm here for you. And I don't know what's going to happen. Like, say the pressure starts really getting through our offensive line, like our line struggles. McKenzie can run a slant 20 yards downfield, but if Allen's running for his life every single play, it doesn't matter. So again, I do think that there is some upside to McKenzie. The reason I say Crowder is still of interest to me is because he has a little bit more Cole Beasley in him than McKenzie does, and I've also seen him consistently prove it on an NFL field, and I haven't seen McKenzie do that. Granted,
on two
Crowder
different teams too with Crowder.
Crowder's gotten way more opportunities than McKenzie, so that's a very fair critique. But I'm more of I need to see it before I believe it, and I need to see it in an actual football game as opposed to practice. And he's flashed all training camp. He's made some plays that are like, oh my God, McKenzie looks good.
I mean, he's got more of a wiggle this year than like that straight line speed that he's done in the past. So I know the concern is that his route concepts are going to be different, or that he's not going to be able to do what Beasley did. But he has even come out himself and said that he has studied a lot of what Beasley was successful at. So it is very possible that you're going to see a refined edition of Isaiah McKenzie this season, which if he is, let's say if he's 70% Beasley, that could be good because he's got probably 50-60% more speed than Beasley did. So you're talking about a faster Cole Beasley, which the biggest issue with Cole Beasley was after he'd catch it, he'd have to fall down because he couldn't beat anybody with his feet, especially towards the end.
Which is crazy because didn't he have a lot of our wide receivers are not great when it comes to yards after catch, but didn't Beasley have the highest, just barely?
He had a higher yak per catch than Diggs did.
Yeah. Even though when you look at Diggs' fight for yards after the catch, you're like, no, he has to have the most. It's insane. But and I feel like we have to reiterate, Hansel, you and I, it kind of reminds me of the Motor versus Moss thing. We don't root against any Bills player. It's just we kind of just go off of what we've seen. And it's if this person can do it, great, show me. Moss was a different story. But,
and honestly, week one, McKenzie against the Rams might be a humongous weapon just because I actually don't even know who their slot corner is. I really only know Jalen Ramsey. I mean, they're not really deep at corner. So then it's can McKenzie outrun whoever their slot guy is? Yeah, he might be open all game. And the only thing I'd say is if that's the case, I still am going to be all right, let's pump the brakes a little. Say he puts up 150 yards week one. I feel like everyone's going to do the victory lap and say, okay, well, McKenzie is a lock for he's the stud of this team or stud at slot. And I'd still be like, well, wait a minute. Because the same thing happened with Zach Moss last year. Zach Moss had 2 touchdowns in the second game, I believe. And I had a bunch of people that I had told, no, Devin Singletary's RB1, Moss can't really hold it. His jock strap. I had a bunch of people come at me I told you about Moss. I told you. And I'm just wait. Let's just wait a minute. And then lo and behold, by end of season, who was right? I was right. So I'm excited for McKenzie though. I want him to succeed and I want him to be as good as everyone's saying he's going to be.
Yeah.
It's just, I need to see it before I'm going to 100% buy it.
Agreed. I kind of want to move on to the defensive backs because you kind of started it. I honestly think we see all the defensive backs except maybe Taron Johnson. And I'm curious what you guys think. Do you think he plays Littleton on some? I feel like he's the only one with the question mark. I think every other defensive back plays. I think Dane Jackson, Kyrie Elam, Cam Johnson, Christian Bedford. I think they all play. It's like significant amounts. What do you guys think about Taron Johnson?
You want to go first, Thomas?
I'd be surprised if he plays. To be honest with you, I think if he really needed to, you could have Terrell Bernard play in the slot. You're gonna find me hard pressed to find any one of the starters in the game, just because I am not sure. Like, our safeties aren't going to play. Obviously, Poyer's not going to play, and Hyde's still just coming off an injury.
Yeah.
The only one that, like you said, I think Kyrie Elam will probably play just because he needs the reps. And he's not like a bona fide he's a first rounder, but like he hasn't really thus far proved. Like, I'll say this, if Kyrie Elam had come out and, just busted the door down and proven that he was number one, potentially even better than Trey, he probably wouldn't play either. But the problem is he hasn't really done that. So I think it lends itself to, like, we need to see him against somebody other than our own wide receivers. Because in-game action is entirely different from practice. So I think him against Pittman could be a really good litmus test to kind of see, like, how he looks in real, full-on game speed time. So, I don't think Taron's going to play. I don't think Milano, Edmonds, I don't think any of them are going to play. I think Benford's going to get a ton of run. I wouldn't be surprised if Benford and Dane Jackson are like the starting corners alongside Kyer. I think he just flips back and forth. I think you're going to see a lot of that.
Hansel, agree? Disagree with anything?
Yeah, Taron Johnson in particular. So just starting there, I can't see him playing it, and one of the main reasons for that is his style of play. Like, he's a thumper, and he wants to light people up, and that's how he gets hurt. Like, that's all of his injuries have been from him trying to lay the boom on somebody, which is awesome to watch. But it's not meant for preseason football. It's meant for live game action. So I don't think you see Taron Johnson, and if you do, I guarantee you the coaches would have said to him, don't go nuts out there, just shove somebody out of bounds. Don't lower your shoulder into somebody. As for the rest of them, like, again, Poyer and Hyde coming off injuries, we're definitely not going to see them. So it's going to be a lot of DeMar Hamlin and Jaquan Johnson. You see Josh Thomas. But yeah, I think the rest of the corners, like we said, Elam, he's probably going to play specifically because he's a rookie. And then Dane Jackson, Cam Lewis, Nick McLeod, Christian Benford, Elijah Griffin. I think you're going to see a bit of a rotation there. I'm not as, and again, Benford, the way that Brandon Beane has spoken about him publicly, I've never seen Beane speak this way about a rookie before. He's so hyper-focused on Benford, and it's seemingly ecstatic about that pick. I'm still not 100% though on him being, let's say, the primary backup at corner behind Dane Jackson, Kyer Elam, assuming Trey doesn't play week one. If Trey does,
he was getting runs. He was getting runs with the ones yesterday.
Yeah, but I think he might be in the lead. Like, I'm with him and Nick McLeod, switching them back and forth. And I know a lot of people aren't talking about Nick McLeod. I still have this sneaky suspicion that he's going to make this roster and make the active game day roster. But I think Nick McLeod, Cam Lewis, Christian Benford, those three guys are really battling for that CB4 spot, let's say. And I'm talking Elam, Jackson, Trey White are your first three. And then McLeod, Lewis, and Benford are fighting for that 4. Benford might be in the lead right now. And I think that's the one benefit of preseason and us watching these preseason games is you're going to see really quickly which of those 3 guys is meant to be on the field and meant to be in that 4th spot and which guys aren't. And over the next, 3 games, one of them is going to stand out enough to say, yeah, that's my spot.
I kind of want to touch on linebackers. Thomas mentioned it. Edmonds and Milano. Yeah, after all this talk, I see them playing little. And I kind of, Thomas disagreed a little bit with seeing Terrell Bernard at the slot, only because if Edmonds and Milano are playing, I think he's going to be getting, I think every snap he takes is going to be a linebacker. I mean, size-wise, he seems like he'd be a backup to Milano, but people are saying, in McDermott's game, they could play anything. And on the depth chart, don't they actually have him as the second middle linebacker?
Mhm.
Or am I
I
mistaken?
think
Yeah.
so.
You could even have Balin Spector in there. I think they're going to be
Mhm.
rotating them all around between
Hmm.
Spector, Bernard, Dotson, Giles Harris. You're going to see a bunch of guys all over the place.
Yeah, so I see Bernard taking a lot of linebacker snaps. So, yeah, I agree. Edmonds, Milano, probably nothing. Hansel, you agree?
Yeah, especially Milano has a little bit of injury history. There's no reason to expose him. We already know what he is. We already know what Tremaine Edmonds. I mean, for the most part, we know what Tremaine Edmonds is. So why put Edmonds on the field? Why put Milano on the field? The only benefit to putting Tremaine Edmonds on this football field, and I don't think they should do this or will do this, is there is something to be said to that live game play calling, like actually being out on the field, because Edmonds calls the plays for our defense. So having him do that with a different set of people, kind of challenging him. But again, with the middle linebacker, like you have to hit in an NFL game, even if it's preseason. Is there really a benefit to putting Tremaine Edmonds on the field when you're exposing him to injury? And when we lose Edmonds, that is a pretty big loss for this team. I wouldn't put him on the field. I don't expect him to play either.
Here's by the way, an article just Tim Graham just retweeted. I don't know if you guys saw this or not. That Deshaun Watson would accept an 8-game suspension and $5 million fine to avoid missing the entire season. That's convenient.
Yeah, of course.
But he did nothing wrong.
Yeah,
right?
According to him.
And Browns fans who
yeah,
want to.
You have to talk yourself into things sometimes.
Yeah, he was found guilty. But defensive line. I want to start with defensive end because I feel like Von Miller not going to play. After him, how many defensive ends are on the roster right now? The 90-man roster. Obviously, Rousseau, Epinesa, Boogie Basham, and Shaq Lawson. What is Mike Love still there?
Yeah, Mike Love is probably practice squad, to be honest with you.
Yeah, since we rotate a lot of these guys, I mean, we can't bench all 5. So how do you think the snap count for Saturday plays out there?
Well, I mean, I think honestly think you might see all of them, except for Miller. I don't want that, but Rousseau is still young and raw. It might be. I can see some. I'm trying to look for benefits here. Like, what's the benefit to playing him? And I think that for the most part, the negatives outweigh the benefits. But to have Rousseau go in the game and have Von Miller sitting on the sideline with just a hat on, no way Von Miller's playing in this game. But have Miller just key on Rousseau and be like, all right, you messed up here. See what you did? Like, that's what you did. Like, literally have Miller playing the coach to all those defensive ends all game. I think there is a benefit there. Again, you're exposing Rousseau to injury, though, which I don't like. But some of these guys have to play. I think you see Shaq Lawson. I think you see AJ Epinesa. I think you see Boogie Basham, Mike Love. I could see Rousseau playing the most limited besides Miller, but the other guy, like, just because of the numbers game, some like AJ Epinesa is going to play a lot, I think.
Yeah. And they like to rotate. I don't think they're suddenly just going to put out 2 defensive ends to play 90% of the snaps with like one who rotates in and out,
Yeah, there's quite a few guys, though. I mean, you've got back-end guys like Kingsley Joseph or Kingsley Jonathan and Daniel Joseph. I mean, there's quite a few guys. I don't know if Rousseau actually sees the field, to be honest with you. I mean, he seems like he's the bona fide, defensive end number 1 outside of Miller. I don't know. I mean, I guess they could give him a run or two, like a first series or second series. Outside of that, though, I don't know. I'm not sure. Again, with a lot of these guys, I mean, I think that third preseason game is where you're going to see these guys more, just to get, kind of get that pop from the pad. That's the big thing. I think a lot of these guys need is to feel the game hit them.
Pop that cherry.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
I think that's probably where you see a lot of this stuff. But yeah, I mean, outside of Rousseau and Miller, I think it's game on. I think all these guys, I think Basham needs a ton. And the one thing that's trippy, and even Joe Marino said this, and it was really confusing, is that Boogie Basham's 55 now, and it's really trippy.
Oh yeah.
After 8 years of Jerry Hughes saying somebody else is 55, it's very odd.
Yeah, too soon.
They should have kept
Come
that
on.
jersey away from him.
Yeah. Give him one season, like not retire it, but like leave it alone for a little bit. There's other 50s you can be.
Yeah.
So I agree, like Vaughn, nothing, Rousseau, little to none. And then the rest of them, like they have to. I feel like defensive tackle is similar. They like to rotate. Ed Oliver, probably none. Daquan Jones, probably none. I know, Thomas, you mentioned earlier, like Tim Settle probably doesn't need to. That would be, Jordan Phillips, same thing. But again, it's a numbers thing. Just like I said with defensive end, like how many guys behind those two starters are there to play?
Yeah, I mean, probably some of these guys are going to want to play. Like I could see like a Tim Settle wanting to play. Like he's just that high energy type of guy. Same thing with Jordan Phillips. But Jordan Phillips is also he's like a vested veteran. I don't know if he will play. That's the thing because I don't.
Mhm.
He's another one of those guys that's a little bit older, a little bit longer in the tooth. So, it's weird though. Like you just never know who they're going to play because sometimes it's just based on how they see him on the depth chart. Sometimes it's just protection. They want to make sure that these guys are protected from game action at that point. So I don't know. I think potentially it might be Ed Oliver and Daquan Jones, and then the rest are full go. So
yeah,
you
can see that.
I mean, just talking about the numbers game again, right? Like the Bills do rotate 4 D tackles as well. So say we take Ed Oliver and Daquan Jones out of this, I believe Eli Ankou is actually hurt or there's something going on with him. I think I'm not 100% positive on that.
Someone tweeted today that he was in pads and off the PUP list.
Okay. So, but even still, I think they might be cautious with him if that happened recently. They might be like, all right, Ankou, you're not in. So then you're talking about really 5 defensive tackles left on the depth chart. So I think they're all going to have to play a little bit. And to Thomas's point, I didn't really think about this. Like Jordan Phillips is older. He might not go because of that. And that's the path. And I don't think you see this, but that's the path to Ed Oliver having to play a few snaps. But I do think there is something to be said that the Bills would be like, nah, Jordan, you're playing. Ed's not playing. Like get in there, run a few snaps. You don't even have to do anything. Just stand there. And he would do it. So,
yeah. All right. Back to the offensive side. Let's talk about tight ends. And again, I feel like it's Knox. And then everyone else, do we think Knox is virtually none? It's a little.
Yeah, I would be very surprised. I think you probably could just run with Doyle or not Doyle.
Sweeney.
I'm sorry, Sweeney. And Doyle.
What about OJ Howard?
Yeah, I think OJ Howard needs a lot of work. He does not look. He doesn't look good at all. From
Quentin Morris, right?
Quentin Morris, Jalen Weidemeyer. Weidemeyer is another one. Not looked very good, as impressive. And I had high hopes for him. I was really hoping that RAS score was nothing, and he was as good as advertised. And I
was gonna ask, is his RAS score showing up on the field?
He just doesn't look. He just, I don't know. I mean, he has all the ambition, and he stays late after practice, but he drops a lot of easy catches. He's huge. He's a big ass dude, and he's super athletic. But sometimes it probably just, unfortunately, just doesn't add up. But yeah, I think you're going to see probably Sweeney, OJ Howard, Quentin Morris, Jalen Weidemeyer. I doubt Dawson Knox even touches the field. So
it's kind of fun always hearing the cliche. He stays late after practice. It's like, cool. He should have stayed late after practice in college.
Yeah,
right.
You're here now, man. Like it's the wrong time to put in the extra work.
Right.
Not it's not completely right, but it's
like when you're your senior year of high school and you're like, oh, I'm going to try to get good grades now. It's like that doesn't mean shit anymore.
Yeah. It's like you have a D+ semesters over in a week. It's like, well, time to crank out all this missing work. Here we go. Hansel, agree anything?
Yeah, again, I'm so iffy with if we'll see a Knox or a Howard. Like, what's the benefit for Knox seeing the field? if Allen isn't playing. And another thing with Knox is I don't think this is necessarily happening, but I've seen some rumors that a contract extension could be in the works. So until that's signed, do you really want to put him in harm's way? I don't really know. So then it comes down to OJ Howard. I think you might see him on the field a little bit just to get him used to playing like with the Bills in particular. But I don't think you're going to see him long. So then it becomes the Tommy Sweeney, Quentin Morris, Jalen Weidermeyer show. And I think Tommy Sweeney ultimately wins that third tight end spot, which, by the way, would be a game day inactive. I don't think they're going to activate 3 tight ends, really 4 if you consider Reggie Gilliam a tight end. And so whoever gets that third spot, they're not going to play at all in any games unless there's a significant injury. And even then, I don't think they play. So that's still something that I'm watching.
I'm starting to wonder if OJ Howard might be the game day inactive for the first couple of weeks or something based on how slow he seems to be catching on.
I mean, I wouldn't think so. I think that there is some benefit. He is a name. So at a minimum, I do think that there's something that like other defenses would look at him and be like, all right, we kind of have to account for OJ Howard. Where if you go 12 personnel with Tommy Sweeney, people are like, all right, well, you can just ignore Tommy Sweeney. We don't care about him.
He also gets significantly more run with the ones than Sweeney does. I mean, Sweeney's pretty much always with the special teams.
I just mean if OJ Howard sounds like what he is, if we're playing 12 personnel, then it sounds like he's just going to be the blocking tight end. And that's something Tommy Sweeney can do, right? He's fairly well blocking. So
but I think it's just the aspect of the fact that OJ Howard has the potential to be a legitimate weapon. I think that's why you just have to keep him out there because nobody's scared of Tommy Sweeney.
Yeah, and I think OJ Howard's biggest thing this season for the Bills is going to be in the red zone. Like I've just thinking through like personnel groupings and how to basically set up an unbeatable offense. In my head, it involves OJ Howard because he's such a mismatch. So if you go that 12 personnel with Dawson Knox, OJ Howard, and then on the outside you have Diggs and Davis, and maybe even you pull maybe you pull Davis off the field and put McKenzie in just to add a little bit of extra like speed. It's just OJ Howard's important in that grouping just because of his size and strength and ability to actually go up and get a football, where we don't really have that size on this team. So I think that there's a benefit to OJ Howard regardless of how he's looked in camp. But again, all of this stuff, I don't really think we're going to see much until we see them against the Rams on Thursday night. September 8th or something.
Right.
All right. Running backs. I mean, I feel like it's Singletary. Does he play?
I see no.
I don't know. Running backs are strange, man. I don't know. I mean, yeah, it very well could just be Zach Moss, James Cook, and Raheem Blackshear the entire game.
Duke Johnson.
Duke Johnson, yeah.
Whatever. Who cares? Duke Johnson.
He might return a punt.
Duke Johnson is literally the most uninteresting player to watch. Every practice, I try to keep an eye on him. There's nothing even remote. There's no spark to his game. He's not. I don't know. Aside, my guess is because James Cook, I believe, even though Zach Moss is number 2 on the depth chart, I wouldn't be surprised if James Cook gets a lot of run on Saturday.
Yeah.
I think Zach Moss. This is a big game for him because this is a game that he can potentially keep himself on this roster or is a viable option instead of a game day inactive. Because as of this point, if James Cook shows out, I think Zach Moss could be riding the pine most of the season.
Yeah. That depth chart they put out, I guess people say pardon my French, but it's a crock of shit to me. I don't believe it for a second. And I don't think that most of it holds any water just because
you don't hold any water.
Some of it just doesn't make sense to me. And I
feel like some of it is just like courtesies.
Yeah. You're right now, Quessenberry is our starting right tackle. I don't think Quessenberry took Spencer Brown's job. I think Spencer Brown is nursing an injury and maybe Quessenberry needs to fill that spot, but it's more like, hey, Quessenberry, you've done really great this camp. here you are. You're first on the depth chart. But so when I see something like Zach Moss ahead of James Cook, I'm like, no, that's not a thing. Like, if that's the case, so again, I went through the roster and you can only have 48 people active. There's no way in my head that the Bills are activating 3 running backs plus Tywan Jones. Like, Zach Moss, James Cook, and Devin Singletary are not all going to be active in the same game. So then if that depth chart's true, James Cook's inactive. And I just don't see that being a thing. So I think this is a huge game for Zach Moss, and I think he's going to play a lot. And if he doesn't do well, if he fumbles the ball this game, if he fumbles once, he's going to be cut. Not the right after this game, but he's not making this roster.
I will say this. Yesterday's practice was the first time, at least in my eyes, that I've seen, and Joe Marino mentioned this too, that they had what they believed is their starting 5 offensive linemen, from Deion Dawkins to Saffold, Morris, Bates, and Spencer Brown. So that was exciting to see that we have finally a healthy offensive line, which is awesome because Quessenberry is a really nice. I think he's what Rick Bates was last year. That kind of like can play all 5 positions type of role. So, yeah, that's all I got. Nothing else.
Yeah.
Just throw one more thing out there for Zach Moss, because I feel like I just shit on him pretty bad. What I read from last year is he literally played with I think it was like a plate in his foot or a screw in his foot or something, because he hurt his foot, and the screw was pressing on a weird angle all season, which was causing him pretty significant pain. So I do think there is something to be said about that, and that might have played a role in some of his struggles last season. But at the same time, some of his struggles were like, here's this gigantic gaping hole, and he just didn't hit the hole. Like that, your foot can hurt if that doesn't affect your eyes, from my knowledge. I'm not a doctor though, but so maybe he's fixed that this year, and maybe we see a different Zach Moss.
I think Thomas made the same comment a while back ago, saying, like, talked about the injuries, like, don't know how that affects your vision.
Right. The only thing that I think could potentially, and I think he has looked quick from what I've saw him in the red and blue scrimmage and in camp. The only thing that I think that could affect is, it may not be his eyes. Maybe it's him getting to the hole by the time he needs, because he may not be like Devin Singletary's learned to run with patience. You've seen him kind of what Le'Veon Bell used to do, where he would kind of like, it was almost really annoying to watch, where you'd almost like kind of stop in the backfield and walk until the ball, the hole opened up, and then he'd go. I don't think that's Zach Moss. Zach Moss is kind of just a one-cut go. So I think it might have been that he just wasn't fast enough to get to the hole. And that's potentially what happened. Because really, honestly, in that scrimmage, he looked really quick. Like really, really quick. At least the fastest I've seen him since he's been in a Bills jersey.
Yeah.
All right. So this brings us to the O-line. And again, this one kind of stumps me a bit because, like Hansu said, it's like a numbers thing.
I think
you're really going to try Case Keenum, Dawkins, and Morris?
Yeah.
I feel like I could see that. Dawkins and Morris. Let Bates get out there. Left tackle could be either Bobby Hart or Tommy Doyle, preferably. Preferably whoever I'm not. Like, I don't want to play behind Bobby Hart.
Yeah.
I
mean, I'd be absolutely stunned more than anyone on this roster. I'd be stunned if you see Mitch Morris on the field, just because of his concussion history, exposing him to contact, like helmet to helmet contact in these games, is just a no for me. And the idea of losing Mitch Morris for week 1 against the Rams, where Aaron Donald is sitting there, is just an absolute nightmare scenario to me. So I don't see Mitch Morris playing. And Deion Dawkins, why? I mean, he's a stud left tackle. There's no reason to play him. With Rick Bates and Roger Saffold, though, at guard, I do have a little bit of concern, just because they're both coming off injury. So it's like, how much do you want to protect them, or how much do you want to get them going? Like, Saffold seems to be full go, but what if somebody pops him in the rib wrong and he re-aggravates that injury? What if, Rick Bates, he had a leg injury? What if he re-aggravates that? Like, maybe they need one more week, but as we've kind of alluded to this entire time, there is a numbers game at point. Like some of these guys are going to have to play, maybe one or two of them. So I'm really not sure who's going to play on the O-line.
Yeah, I mean, you could honestly see, and it wouldn't surprise me, like Hansel said, that it's just Spencer Brown. And even that, you may not even see Spencer Brown because Spencer Brown's coming off a back injury. So maybe they don't want to put him right out there. It might just be backups for the entire game. And that's not a bad thing because a lot of these guys, like a Cody Ford, you might see Cody Ford play the whole goddamn game. Because
I think you'll see a lot of him.
Because he's fighting. Quite frankly, I think this is one of those games where it could define his career. This is like you're out of the NFL type of scenario.
Yeah.
All right.
Are we going to talk about the punt job? I mean, come on.
I was going to say
Ariza out of this.
I was actually going to go and I proposed to Hansel that do you think Ariza holds every extra point or field goal?
Yes.
Yeah.
I
you know Hawk can do it. So
why have Hawk do it?
Give Ariza
get Ariza the full game holding. Yeah. Yes.
And I want to mention Thomas has brought up Joe Marino. I was listening to him too. He said the last Joe Marino was at training camp and he said Hawk held like every field goal and that looked good. Like not glowing, not great. Ariza, sorry. He's like Ariza held every field goal. He's like looked good.
Ariza also had another 75-yard punt with a 4.75 hang time. The dude is, if he can figure out this holding, it's game over. And Hawk knows it.
Which is funny because I heard someone tweet that his hang time wasn't that good, so maybe that's why he was only the third punter drafted. But I don't know.
My thought process is he can literally kick the ball from end zone to end zone if he wants. Kick it out every single time. Other teams don't return against us. They just start on the 20-yard line. I'm perfectly fine with a touchback on every single kick. It doesn't matter to me at all.
No, he's got to pin him back at the 1-yard line. I want to touch back.
He did at his pro day, he did punt a ball 80 yards that landed on the 1-yard line. Stopped on the one, which was pretty cool.
I mean, if we can get some coffin corner kicks this year, which we haven't seen in a long time, that would be stupendous. Because that's what made Mormon so beloved, is he could just pin these guys in the worst spots.
Yeah. I actually think Matt Hawk had one last year. I think he had one.
Yeah,
that, was right at the one.
It was right. It went 2 yards to the left, right out on the sideline. It was phenomenal.
I just remember Pat McAfee going bananas about it. So,
my wife texted me. My wife is a Colts fan. Reminder: Matt Ryan's gonna play the whole first quarter.
That's crazy.
Don't know. Well, he's a brand new quarterback. I think they want to see some out of him.
Good. It's great for Elam, Jackson, whoever's in there. It's great for them. Like they're literally going to be playing against a professional quarterback instead of. I couldn't tell you who the Colts backup quarterback is.
Who is it? I feel like it's been brought up recently. You're going to look it up?
Yeah.
Me too. Isn't Matt Ryan like 33, 34 years old now? Maybe an older.
I think he's a third. I think
he looks like the oldest. He looks the oldest.
It's
Nick Foles. That's right. That'll be interesting when I guess.
Ravens are going to win this game again, by the way.
I know they are. Matt Ryan's 37.
Jesus.
No.
Alrighty. Well, did we miss anything? Anything you guys want to? Oh, I mean, how many snaps is Reggie Gilliam gonna take? Huh?
He might take some at tight end. I mean, newly extended guy take a couple at tight end, move him around, see what he can do.
They gave him 2 goal line runs last season.
Actually,
Thomas.
Yeah, got a photo with him.
Yeah. But they gave him 2 goal line runs last offseason. They didn't give him any during the regular season, so I don't know.
True.
But hey, it's fun. That's why preseason's fun sometimes. You get to see those stuff like that. Never got to see Reggie Gilliam get a handoff, but we got to see it twice in preseason last year. So, all right, guys. Is that it? We done?
I think we're good.
All right. 59 minutes and
should be a pretty darn good game. I mean, the one thing that's exciting is we're at the point where now this team is so damn good that we're talking about nonsense roster spot. I mean, they're not nonsense. These are spots for guys that is their livelihood and is incredibly important to them. But it's stuff like that. Like for years and years, we'd be talking about, oh, okay, who's going to be the number 2 wide receiver. Now you're talking about who's number 7. So that's nice. You know, it should be a good game. It should be some really, really contested battles and guys that are, you know, fighting, and it's good.
Also, we were undefeated the last 2 preseasons, so we got to keep that up.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Preseason champs back to back to back.
And I'll have money on the game just because I'm a degenerate. So, will I lose it? Yeah, probably.
Maybe if you stop spending so much money, you could afford sleeves.
It's true. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for listening. My name is Jeremy. You can find me on Twitter at Back of the Herd. You can find Hansel at Twitter at Uber Hansen. You can find some of his writings at Cover One. You can find Thomas on Twitter at the Thomas DeLoss. You can catch Buffalo Late Night when?
Monday, 9:30 p.m. Eastern.
Monday, 9:30 p.m. And you can catch our podcast Twitter at Process on Tap. Thank you again for listening, and go Bills.
Go Bills.